Well, as this was described as speed dating, I can honestly say I've never speed dated this many people at once, so I'm flattered. I'm sure one of you will connect with me in a way. So as I was introduced, this is our building, so we're delighted to have you all here. Welcome. These were some of the founding studios of the ballet school. So this is where the school was first started back in 1959, so kind of sacred dance space for sure. And there's the Karen Kane window over on the other side. So a lot of that generation of ballet dancers were developed in these spaces. So I'm to talk to you about connecting with, I think, big institutions like mine and corporations, which are kind of two separate topics. So maybe we can divide our times. The first 10 minutes is on the big institutions and the second is on corporations, because I kind of think the intersection points are a bit different. So in terms of where we are in the arts today, you probably know in dance in the community, we've got a couple of very large budget organizations in the city. The National Ballet of Canada is the presenting company, our school, and then we've got a sort of a major gulf between those organizations in terms of budget size and a lot of the emerging field. So I think one of the challenges ahead for Toronto is how do we develop mid-sector organizations, mid-size organizations, and really it's up to all of you to help us imagine how to do that. Artistic process over the last 1,000 years has really been about churn and about change and so on. So the infrastructure that's here today is really a product of the last couple of generations, and really to now reimagine how these organizations adapt and how dance is reflected in society is really going to be dependent on using this large infrastructure and helping to sort of reimagine its purpose and use into the future. So that's kind of where I sort of see things as somebody involved with one of the larger institutions. One of the challenges, I'll tell you, is it costs a lot to keep these buildings afloat. So we're always looking for opportunities to make sure we continue to succeed. Every year the ballet school has to raise about $3 million from the private sector in donations just to cover the cost of the facilities. So finance is a challenge for us, even though we are big. I think there's this sort of perception out there that if you're one of the larger institutions, it's no problem, it's easy, the money's all there. It's not. And also, in terms of interface with the sector, it's so broad and diverse. One of the challenges for us is figuring out who to partner with and how to partner with them effectively. So there certainly is openness on our part, but sort of how do we interface with new art forms, with different artists, I think has been a challenge for us and is a challenge for all the large institutions. So maybe I'll start that with that and open it up for any questions you may have. Does anyone have a question about how to get connected to a larger institution?
Yes, you need to use the microphone.
I think the first thing is just how do you make that first connection? Like, do you write a letter? Do you walk in and talk to someone? Or what's the best way to make the first connection with one of the bigger organizations if you want them to help you out in it?
I think the same. Do you need me to repeat that question for the live streamers? You heard it? No, good. I think when it comes to grants, when it comes to fundraising, and when it comes to this kind of shared resource interface, distinctiveness is critical. I think there's a hope or an assumption that somehow when you write a grant, you can just go online and look at the application and submit a grant and you'll succeed. Generally, people get involved with other people, so having that personal connection is really, really critical. So what I would just encourage people to do is be really creative and imaginative in terms of how you interface with an organization. Don't assume that the organization is me. There's 170 staff that work at the school in our case. Finding multiple people that you might connect with, meeting people when you're out, the sort of the social networking aspect is really critical, not just online, but in person. So I think really making connections with people within that organization are really, really critical. And also trying to imagine what is distinctive about what you would like to do and your approach relative to everything else. And I think that really from a funding perspective is probably more important, but even when it comes to partnering, if suddenly we had 200 people asking to partner with the ballet school, it's hard for us to sort of differentiate one from the next. And you're all artists and you're all creative, and finding ways to sort of stand out it will be really critical. So I think getting really involved, connecting with people is probably the most essential piece. And trying to imagine, if you find an organization and you Google some of their staff and figure out that, oh, they're also on the board of this organization and they're also involved in that, there are ways to sort of connect with people on a myriad of different levels.
I don't know exactly if this is going to be relating to the two topics or two issues, but I have asked this question before, and people are kind of stumped when I say it, but I want to dance for bands, for like rock bands, alternative bands, you know, a lot of bands that don't usually have background dancers, and, you know, perform, not just that, but like that's like one of my main goals. And I don't know exactly, I was just like, I've got my own ideas of how to connect with them and stuff, but I was just wondering if you know, or if you have ever, you know, thought of that.
Well, personally, I haven't thought of dancing with rock bands, but I think Toronto's got such a vibrant scene that way. I think it would be looking at, you know, which are the clubs where these things are. Obviously, the Cameron House plays a central role in the city. I would look personally at the Arts and Crafts record label and their roster of artists and figure out who's playing where, because they're very dynamic in terms of thinking about these kinds of partnerships. So I think,
how would you approach them with, say, hey, I want to dance for you guys, and they're going to be like, I've said that,
yeah,
and they're like, okay, that's awesome. They're really, you know, they're really happy to hear that, you know, but they're like, we don't know exactly how you would do that, because there's not, like a lot of the shows that we do, there's not a lot of room on the stage.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, so basically I have to come up with like a concept, or show them like something, you know, on video of what I would mean or what I would do. I don't know, but like.
Right. I think tangibility is like really critical there. So being able to show them something, even if it was a sort of a conceptual layout, would probably be worth checking out some of the bands and what venues they're playing and what some of the constraints of those venues might be in terms of production, and how you might work in that so that the video example of what you'd show would actually fit some of the parameters that they're facing. But I think tangibility is important, and generally making things easy for people. My experience with people in all sorts of different sectors is people are really short on time generally. So making anybody you want to partner with have to work too hard to figure out what you're proposing, it will work against you generally, because people are overwhelmed, they don't have the time to think that through. So just making it as...
You have to do most of the, you know, thinking for the concept, and then just bring it to them.
Exactly. Yep, I'd agree with that.